doesn't show me the names. Here we go. Janine Robertson, Keith McCone, Luis Garcia, welcome. Bill Weber, Michael Richardson, welcome this evening. Reiko Sato, welcome. Dave McDowell, and I'm sure Peggy's there too. Hello. Stuart Byer, welcome. Corey Joyner. Hello, Corey. Brian, hi. I think most of you know. Hi, Kathy Taylor. Welcome back. Doug Alford. Hello. Most of you guys know, but every now and again, there's a new name in here. So Zoom, the way it works, it's just like opening a meeting room door and you're filing in a couple at a time. So we know we're live. I just like to say hello to everybody as you come in, just while we wait till everyone gets in here. So we have a smaller crowd this evening, but thank you for those of you that have kind of paid attention, have been hanging out with us and knew this evening was going on. And we had broken links and all kinds of stuff. So thank you so much that you've been following us and made it this evening. Anyway, we are talking with Jeff Ginther this evening. He is with the Cayman Islands Tourism Board. So he's going to share all 3 islands with you. Between myself and my team, we've been to these various islands, but probably multiple times. You know, I don't even know what to say about the Caymans. It really has it all. I absolutely love the Caymans. It's such a great destination. So I'm going to let Jeff share it from his standpoint. So over to you, Jeff.
Okay, thank you, Cheryl, and welcome everybody. I hope everybody can see my screen okay, but my name is Jeff Ginther. I am the Midwest rep for the Cayman Islands Department of Tourism. I'm going on my 25th year of doing this. When I started, I was young, had hair, no wrinkles, probably not even glasses at the time, but you know, age has a mysterious way of sneaking up on you. But we're going to get in here. The presentation itself will cover all 3 islands and the diving and the properties that are being sold by Deep Blue that are kind of dive geared. I would suggest that if you have something that I don't have in my presentation, ask Cheryl, ask one of the reservation people, and they may have it or may be able to get it for you. But moving along, the Cayman Islands, if you have not been there, they are in British overseas territory. There's 3 islands. They're in the Western Caribbean, English speaking. Grand Cayman is about 500 miles south of Miami, directly south. They have all the comforts of home, including the Wi-Fi, the cell service, the ATMs. US dollar is widely accepted. They have their own dollar. And unfortunately, we lose 20% on the US dollar. So if you give them $1 US, it's like you gave them 80 cents Cayman. The most important thing, and I think this is where a lot of our business comes from to the Cayman Islands, is the fact that they are very clean. It's a very safe destination and the people are very friendly. 9 things. Now this was put in, we always like to put this one in, but 9 things you might not expect of the Cayman Islands is that they're not islands at all. It's actually a mountain range, the Cayman Ridge, it kind of sits, includes Cayman, but just south of Cayman, about 4 miles is where you find the Cayman Trench. They drive on the left because it is a British territory, of course. There's 7 Mile Beach, which is, you know, we always like to say it's 7 Mile Cayman, 5 3/4 US. It is the culinary capital of the Caribbean. And over by Rum Point, that is considered the home of the mudslide, where the mudslide was developed. And the underwater fairy dust, of course, is a secret lagoon on Grand Cayman. And they have the bioluminescence that can be found there. We have a dive site for every day of the year, which is 365 dive sites. And we have some of the rarest species of animals in the world on these 3 small islands. Number 1, the blue iguana, which is the rarest iguana in the world, and they're only found on Grand Cayman. We have the rarest orchid in the world, which is called the ghost orchid. The red-footed booby colony, which is on Little Cayman, is the largest booby colony in the Western Hemisphere. And the only native mammal that you from the Cayman Islands is actually the Cayman bat. And also, Little Cayman is considered one of the least developed islands left in the Caribbean, with only 197 people, 2,000 iguanas, and the iguanas have the right of way. So moving on, like I said, it's 3 islands, the Western Caribbean, just south of Miami. This kind of gives you some of the routes throughout the US that do have nonstop service. The airlines that service these are what you see now in front of you. Most of the airlines, it's either going to be a one-stop, but all the major hubs usually have nonstop service. For instance, out of the Midwest, we have Chicago, we have Detroit, and we have Minneapolis, but those are all seasonal. So those will be in high season. You have some of your nonstops are going to be from New York, from Miami, from Tampa. Those are year-round services, and Atlanta, of course. But our national flag carrier is Cayman Airways. And again, their hubs are Denver, which is seasonal, Miami, New York, and Tampa. Cayman Airways Express are the small 16-passenger otters. They will take you over to Cayman Brac or to Little Cayman. Now, bear in mind that if you ever travel this way, when you book your trip with Deep Blue, when you get on Cayman Express, you are allowed 55 pounds of luggage, which means your carry-on and your suitcase. But I always tell everybody, especially if you're going to Little Cayman, and for the most part, Cayman Brac, if you have something more than shorts and tank tops or t-shirts, you're way overdressed. The only long pants or button-down shirt you might wear is what you wear on the aircraft when you're flying down, and you can fly back with that. But it's really, you don't need much at all. But on Grand Cayman, we have Owen Roberts International Airport. This is reopened in 2019, so just over a year ago, where they tripled the size of the terminal. The capacity, or what was supposed to have been the capacity, is over 2 million people, but we're now, with all the COVID, we're still trying to find a number of what they're assuming the airport can accommodate at this time. And also, with all the new check-in, departure, arrival halls, food court, it just is a more pleasant experience for you as you go in and out of the airport. So plenty of seating, plenty of walk-around area, and plenty of choices for, if you want to grab a little quick bite before you get on the aircraft. But the first island we are going to talk about here is Grand Cayman. And Grand Cayman, bear in mind, if you are traveling with a non-diver, Grand Cayman is probably your best choice, because they do have the beaches, they have the shopping, there's restaurants, there's more attractions for them to do while you're diving. But if you're a diver, you're not going to find any problems at all, because there's 240 dive sites on Grand Cayman. And also bear in mind, all the dive sites except for Stingray City do have mooring balls there. So, and they only allow 1 dive boat per ball. So if you come in, you're trying to get to a dive site, there's usually one close by that you can hook on to, but you have to wait until the dive boat is gone before you can hook up to that mooring ball. But on Grand Cayman, there's it's the capital of the Cayman Islands, which is Georgetown. It's the most popular, or most populated, I'm sorry. There's a variety of the topside activities and attractions. And it's the gateway, the main gateway for all international flights. The only flight that comes in aside from, other than Grand Cayman, is Cayman Airways. They do have a flight that goes from Miami to Cayman Brac. And it is the port of call for all the Western Caribbean cruises. Getting around Cayman, once you arrive, now typically I think most of your packages will have transportation included, but if you're on Grand Cayman and you need to get around, you want to go out to dinner one evening or just go to an attraction or shopping, there's a variety of ways to get there. The ground transportation, of course, there's car rentals, taxis, limousine service, bus service, bicycles for that matter. But our taxi service, they're available on all 3 islands, but there is an app that you can download that'll give you an approximation of what you're going to be charged, but they do increase the charge. If you happen to use them coming from the airport, then they charge for extra luggage, they charge for extra people. So you always want to make sure. Typically when you're at the airport, you check in with the taxi desk and they will give you a little slip and it tells the cost on it, and you just take it over to a taxi and they take you where you want to go. But also we have a bus service on Grand Cayman that covers the entire island. It varies on price depending on where you're going. Like it says here, it's $2 to $5 CI. I mean, you can take it over to East End, but the East End service cuts off about 6 o'clock. And believe me, if they're halfway there and it's getting close to 6, they will turn around and come back. Another problem with the bus is the cruise ships have discovered the bus service. So a lot of times the buses are full because they're small jitney type vans. And if they're full, of course, they cannot pick you up. Now, when you're walking down, if you happen to be walking down West Bay Road on Grand Cayman and you hear a lot of people, or I should say a lot of vans honking at you, it is the bus. They typically, what you see here in the picture, I don't know if you can see the arrow here, but that's the way they're labeled on the front of the bus. So you have a 2WB, a 1WB, that type of thing. They're honking because you can wave them down anywhere and they will pick you up. But you can kind of see the hours here. And Sunday is always limited service. And that typically is Georgetown and around the 7 Mile Beach corridor. And then also, like I said, on Grand Cayman, there's a number of activities that you can do. Aside from scuba diving, if you want to, take an afternoon off or you have a free day. We do have the Cayman Islands Turtle Center, which actually they do breed green sea turtles. And it's more now of a eco park so that you can actually see the turtles, you can touch the turtles. They have a bird aviary, they have a shark tank there, there's artisans, there's food and gifts that are available there. We also have the Botanic Park, and that is where they have the blue iguana breeding program. So if you're ever gonna see one on Grand Cayman, typically it'll be at the Queen Elizabeth II Botanic Park. We also have the Mission House, which is, again, if you can see this, it's this bottom picture. And I really enjoyed this because it really shows the way people lived in the Cayman Islands 100+ years ago, what they had in their homes, why they had it in their homes. We also have Pedro St. James, which I just see a picture of the sign here. That is a whole historic site, and it's kind of a compound where they have this old, I don't want to say a plantation home because that's kind of what it looks like, but there were no plantations on Cayman. It was just a family that built this home and lived there. But they also brought other historic homes and structures from around the islands and put them into this compound. There's a welcome center. You'll see later more in this, but actually the Scuba Diving Hall of Fame sits on that same property. And there's a little restaurant and bar there. So it's an afternoon activity. We also have Starfish Point, which is up by Rum Point, which reflects on this sign here. But Starfish Point is an area, some call it Starfish Beach, but it's over by Rum Point. It's an area where, and with this COVID and there's no tourists there, you could go there and see a couple dozen starfish that are coming up by the shore. But now I just saw, I think it was on Facebook, that they quit counting at 267 starfish that had come up to the beach. We also have, again, Rum Point, where the mudslide was developed. We have 2 dolphin parks on island. There's Rum Cake Bakeries, and we have the picture of the sub here, but the sub closed for COVID, and they claim they're not reopening. So we're still waiting to hear to see if somebody else takes over that. We also have a National Museum, which is downtown Georgetown. So it actually sits, I don't even see it in this picture. It's just beyond where this picture shows. But that's a very interesting place to go to get some historic value of the Cayman Islands. And all 3 islands do have a national museum. But just go by, one of our newest attractions is Crystal Caves. This is over in the north side on Grand Cayman. So it's a hike around the island, not quite to Rum Point. You go into the interior of the island, and there's a number of caves, but they have 3 that are open to the public. And you see here, they have all the lighting. One of the caves, which you see in the top left corner, is they found a half-mile long underground lake in there. It is it's warm. There's a lot of bugs there, although they do give you spray if you want to use them. And there's actually bats in the cave. So if you have any problem with any of those things, you might not want to take the trek. But it is worth it. It's an approximately a 2-hour tour. And you just have to make sure you have the right clothing, the right shoes. But it is very interesting. And then, of course, what Grand Cayman is famous for is 7 Mile Beach. It sits on the west side of the island, typically very calm. And that's where most of the hotels are, and condominiums. So when you go to 7 Mile Beach, you might walk in front of one of the large hotels and you're going to think, okay, it's a little crowded here. You walk up a little ways and you're going to go around by condominiums and it's not crowded. So it's not a crowded beach. And typically when you're on the beach, like first thing in the morning, I always like to walk it, and you'll see a number of people doing that, but it's just a sight to behold. Unless you've seen it, you've never seen a beach like this. But moving on into the diving in Cayman, Grand Cayman in particular, here's where we get into our Dive Cayman 365. And they do have 365 dive sites on all 3 islands. We're considered one of the world's top dive destinations. We have more than 30 operators on island. The waters are typically very calm. They're easy diving. We don't have these big crashing waves. There's no drift diving. Some will say, okay, there's a little drift dive, but a lot of people, especially divers that have been to other destinations, they look at them like they're crazy because they don't feel the drift. We have 100-foot plus visibility on all 3 islands, a variety of marine life, very pristine reefs, wall dives, wrecks, legendary wrecks, as a matter of fact. And there's hardly ever a non-diveable day because they will move boats around to the different sides of the island if a storm is coming in on another side. You have 3 islands to choose from. All of them are surrounded by protected reefs, so they're shallow protected coral reefs. And because we're in that Western Caribbean and we're kind of off by ourselves, we're pretty secluded location, so it keeps the corals healthy. The waters stay clean, they stay clear. And because of the mountain range that the Cayman Islands are part of, that's why we have the very spectacular wall diving. And there's a lot of different types of diving. And I'll touch more on this as we go through, but you're gonna have the vertical walls, you have the shipwrecks, you have the reefs, there's shore diving, there's tech diving, and the water typically stays about 80 to 85 degrees year round. So it makes for perfect diving. Now this is the 240 dive sites on Grand Cayman. I know this is hard to read, but you see they span mostly on the west, the north, and the east side of the island. There's a few on the south, but typically the operators don't use the south side of the island unless there's storms coming in and they can't dive the other side. So they'll go into the south. And also what you'll find is a lot of the operations or the properties themselves, they'll dive right in that area. Like for instance, West Bay area, you have 2 properties. You have Cobalt Coast, which is up here on the north side of West Bay. You have Lighthouse Point, which sits right here on this bend. You have Sunset House, which is just south of Georgetown, and there's Compass Point, which is over here on East End. So they kind of stay within their little areas, unless of course like I said, storms are coming through and they move the boats. And also Compass Point does do trips out to the Kittiwake, which is over here on the west side of the island. What you're going to find is you're going to find some of the friendliest locals you'll ever meet. And not only the fish, not only the turtles, but one in particular is going to be Stingray City. Everybody gets a real kick out of Stingray City. It's a very easy dive. That's where I always practice my buoyancy. I do scuba dive, but I don't scuba dive a lot. So I'm always practicing buoyancy and not touching and that type of thing. Stingrays are very used to people there. They know they're going to get fed. They're attracted by the sound of the boat motors that come in. And it has always been dubbed the world's best 12-foot dive. So really, you only have to watch your air consumption. So it's always good. But just getting into the properties, like I said, there are 4 main properties that cater to a scuba diver on Grand Cayman. The first one here is Ocean Frontiers. Ocean Frontiers is on the east end. They are Green Globe certified. They have 1, 2, and 3 bedroom condominiums. So it's good for a dive group. I mean, you might have a 2-bedroom condominium and you might think, okay, I don't know this other couple, but you each have your own bathroom. The only common areas you have are going to be the kitchen, the dining area, and the living room, which is nice. It's almost like your own personal little lobby there. They do have an on-site, which is right up in this area. They have a bar and kind of a grill, little restaurants there. A lot of their packages, and I don't know this for sure, Cheryl can answer the question, but I think a lot of their packages include a rental car. They do have 2 pools. They have one on the ocean side. They have another building that's across the street from what you're seeing here. So they have a building, what you're seeing in this picture. They have another building, which whoever took this picture was actually at that building. And then they have one across the street. So there's one on this side, one up across the street at the other building. Ocean Frontiers is the on-site operator. They also have a location at the Wyndham Hotel. So sometimes they'll take guests or bring guests over from the Wyndham to dive with them, but they have another location. And their philosophy has always been roll out of bed and onto a dive boat. Now, again, COVID, we don't know what's all going to happen here, but they were typically a valet type service where they picked up your gear and you never had to touch it again until you left, unless you wanted to. They rinsed it, they hung it, had it all set up on the boat. They want you, of course, to set it up one time. After that, they'll have it all set up. And they dive, of course, the East End. Steve and his team there, they do a lot of dives. You see a lot of sharks, a lot of large critters on that side. And the wall has a lot of swim throughs. So you'll see a tunnel, you'll go through a tunnel and you come right out onto the wall. So this is more of their diving that takes place on that side. There's also one of the last grouper holes on Grand Cayman that is just offshore from Compass Point. And I don't know if it's still active. The last I heard, which is a few years ago, you have to wait so many years because the grouper are so overfished that I guess it's 7 years till they reach maturity, and then they'll come back to the same grouper hole where they were hatched and lay eggs. So they're still not through that 7-year period to say if it's active or not. Another resort, again, this is over by West Bay. This is Lighthouse Point Dive Resort. They just built, which I don't have the new pictures, unfortunately, they just built another building. So it kind of would sit right in this area. But Lighthouse Point has 1, 2, and 3 bedroom condominiums. And they have a kind of a carved out pool into the rock over in a saltwater pool. And then they also have a freshwater pool that's with the new building that they built. They will give you, when you arrive, a welcome package, which includes some breakfast items for the first morning you're there, water, and I guess a bottle of wine, from what I understand. They have a dive shop on property, which is Dive Tech. It sits right at the front of this building, and a little restaurant that sits over on this side. So they do provide 3 meals at the restaurant out here. They also have shore diving available here. So you can grab tanks and just walk on out, kind of where this person is taking this photo. You're right on their little pier there, and you just hop in the water. Well, you can kind of see it in this upper picture too. And we also have probably one of the more famous properties on Grand Cayman. It's 50 plus years in existence, is Sunset House. Sunset House sits just south of Georgetown. So it kind of gives you an overview of what the property is. They have rooms and suites, both ocean view and courtyard view. Their on-property dive operator, of course, is Sunset Divers. And they always say this is the hotel for divers by divers. So it's kind of what their motto was, or their logo was, for a number of years. They do have a pool, which you can see here, and they also have one of the carved-in pools. So you can use that to practice buoyancy or whatever. There's stairs going down into it. They have a bar, which is right here. This is a thatch roof bar. It's probably one of the most popular scuba diving bars around. It's my bar. And they do offer shore diving. So you can, once again, grab a tank, walk down, and do a shore dive. And it's also the home of Kathy Church Underwater Photography. So you'll see that when you come in, just off the lobby, just across from the front desk, you'll see her little store. And you can buy equipment, you can take classes, the whole works. And on the west side, now the west side of Grand Cayman, or that west wall off of 7 Mile Beach, I don't know, I personally love the dive sites in that area because to me it's the more iconic dive sites of the Cayman Islands. So if you ever looked, 25 years of doing this, some of the old dive posters, dive ads, they always had those iconic dive sites, and that's where you're going to find most of these. They did, develop other dive sites, of course, to take the pressure off of those iconic dive sites, and especially when it comes to cruise ships. Now, if you see on this top, this is the Kittiwake. This is a decommissioned U.S. ship that was sunk on Grand Cayman on purpose to take the pressure off of the natural reefs, especially when it came to the cruise ships, because sometimes they bring a lot of divers out. So it's that was put in, and it's helped the other sites because they will go there. One of my favorites is Devil's Grotto, which you see a number of pictures here. But when that fills up with those silver sides that are going in, it's amazing to see. It's like a curtain that opens up as you go into these caverns. And that's very, very close to Sunset House. And then the last property here is Cobalt Coast. That is also on West Bay, but it's on the north shore of West Bay. They have rooms, they have suites, and they have cottages. This is also one of the clearly Cayman properties, so it is Reef Divers that is housed here. They have the pool, they have a restaurant, bar, and they also offer shore diving, as you can see. This one can get a little rough in this area if storms are coming through or if there's just heavy winds, and they won't let you shore dive. But typically you can shore dive there. And it's also one of the few properties on Grand Cayman that has a kind of an all-inclusive option, meaning you can get your drinks included or a few drinks included and your meals with packages. And then these are typically the north wall. There's very pristine walls out there. And also, again, you're going to find big critters out in that area of when you're diving. So this is just some of the north wall that is on Grand Cayman. But moving 90 miles away, so no, there are no ferries that go over there. The only boat ship that goes over there would be the Aggressor. And they do that during the night, but no, you have to fly in, and that's where you use Cayman Airways Express. But Cayman Brac does their airport, they can land the 737. So the jets will go over from Cayman Airways also. But it's probably the most unique of the Cayman Islands. It was named for a 140-foot bluff, which you see in the picture there, which is on the east side of the island. And they are using this now. Some of the rock climbers go into that area and use that. But it's just a very unique island. It's very kind of quaint. Blossom Village, which is kind of what would be kind of on the north side of the island, north and east, but it's an old Cayman town, and they have some of the architecture, the gingerbread homes, things of that sort. Very interesting to see. There are lots of caves and lots of cliffs on here. And if you ever take a tour, if you do the island tour here, your tour guide is going to show you paths that they used to walk the cattle up that, believe me, I can't even get up these. I don't know how they got cattle up them, but kind of interesting. The BRAC has 65 dive sites, and most of those are going to be right around the hotel area, right around this southwest and northwest side of the island. But when it comes to attractions and that type of thing, there are some structured tours. Like I said, there's a lot of caves to go into. There's one that's called Rebecca's Cave. I'll let you, it's got a little coffin in it. That's all I'm going to tell you. I could tell you funny stories, but I'm not going to get into that right now. They have the bluff, they have the parrot reserve, the lighthouse on the bluff, and there's some paths you can take, little nature trails. And there's a lot of fishing that takes place there. And of course, there is the National Museum. So there's a few things to do. A lot of people would just grab a bike, go for a bike ride. Very simple to do. But the property that I'm covering here is also another clearly Cayman property. This is the Cayman Brac Beach Resort. Cayman Brac Beach Resort was, well, not newly remodeled, but it has been remodeled over the last couple years. They have 40 rooms, all ocean view. This, what you're seeing in the photo here, is their new pool. And they have a new restaurant and bar. Reef Divers, again, is the in-house dive operation there. And they also will include, because you don't have a lot of choices when it comes to restaurants on the sister islands. So you'll, typically there's a meal plan included, and that again, you have to ask Cheryl about. I don't really get into those details of it, but you'll have your meals there. Typically it is served buffet style, but I'm telling you, the clearly Cayman, I don't know where they get their chefs, but you are going to have some of the best food you ever ate. And I believe me, you're going to say it when you leave. But Cayman Brac, a lot of the diving there, which you see here, in 1996, they secured a decommissioned warship from Cuba. It was actually a Russian warship, excuse me, which is now has been sunk. And it's the Captain Keith Tibbets. So that's the one over on its side right now. It's broken up a little bit from storms over the years, but still very interesting to dive. What you'll find close to the Brac is you're going to find a lot of coral heads, a lot of sand flats in that area with the large coral heads. But you're 5 miles from Little Cayman, and because there's a sister property on the Brac, they will take you over there usually for a day, you know, weather permitting, and you can dive some of the sites on Little Cayman also. Little Cayman, like I said, excuse me, it's 5 miles away from the Brac. It's the smallest of the islands. Like I said, less than 200 people live there full time. And it's, I always like to tell this because there's 2 pictures on here. This is actually the airport, the post office, if you can see this arrow, the fire station, the police station, and Cayman Airways offices. So this is the first thing you'll see as you come in on the Otter, but it always cracks me up to see this one picture. If you look under this overhang right here, you're gonna see this Terminal A, Gate 1. So they're their own little airport there. And as I said, the iguanas there have the right of way, so you're going to see these signs all over the place. And actually, this bottom picture is actually the hungry iguana. It sits just behind this airport, and it's the unofficial departure lounge for the airport. They actually call the bar and say, hey, the plane's getting ready to leave. Anybody that's getting on has to get down here now. So it's unofficially the departure lounge. But anyway, this is the island, unless you really like to read and be by yourself, this is probably not the island for non-divers. There's really not a lot of activities there that they can get involved with. But there are 60 dive sites on Little Cayman, and again, they're listed. And probably the most famous is Bloody Bay Wall, which you're going to just find in this area up on the north side, the northwest side of the island. Bloody Bay Wall starts at 40 feet and drops 5,000 feet. So it's a very pristine. There's not a lot of hotel rooms on Little Cayman, so it's always sought after. The attractions primarily are going to be on your own. There's not really any kind of structured sightseeing or attractions that are on Little Cayman. But you're going to see the kayaking, you can do the boats. This one top picture here on the left is Owen Island. This is actually a private island just off the shore of Little Cayman, but you know, the owner doesn't mind people kayaking over there. Well, actually it's right here too. They kayak over there, they'll look at the beach. It's really kind of a strange beach because they get a lot of what washes up on shores, I think that falls off a cruise ship. So I've seen lawn chairs up there and towels and you have it. They do have the largest, like I said, largest breeding colony of the red-footed booby on Little Cayman. And they also have a kind of, I don't know, it's a visitor center and it kind of overlooks the booby pond, and they have the telescope so you can see them close up. There's a lot of bone fishing that happens on Little Cayman. Excuse me. And they also have, again, National Museum. But this is Little Cayman in a nutshell. If you want to go to the museum, you go over to the visitor center for the booby pond and pick up the key, let yourself in, lock up when you're done, and bring the key back. So that's Little Cayman in a nutshell. But the one property that we're going to discuss here is Little Cayman Beach Resort. This also is a sister properties of the Cayman Brac Beach Resort and Cobalt Coast on Grand Cayman. So there are 40 rooms and suites at this property. They're either oceanfront, ocean view. They have the restaurant, bar, of course, spa services. Again, Reef Divers is here, and they also do offer the meal plans because really, to be quite honest with you, the only public restaurant on Little Cayman is going to be the Hungry Iguana, which is the unofficial departure lounge at the airport. Rooms are very nice. They were updated recently. And what you see here is you have the pool, and then the bar restaurant is over in this area. So and again, the properties with Reef Divers offer that valet type service of diving, meaning that, you know, they will rinse and hang and pick up and the whole works of all your equipment if you don't want to touch it. And again, the diving you're going to have, this is wall diving. This is it's a sought after dive for Little Cayman. It's very pristine. Bloody Bay Wall, like I said, starts at 40, drops 5,000 feet. Some very large critters there, and you're going to find a number of grouper that are very tame and very friendly and will actually hound you until you notice them. So some will actually rub up against you, but some are large enough where it kind of freaks you out a little bit when something bumps you and you think it's your dive buddy, but it's this great big fish alongside of you. But just to kind of reinforce the Cayman Islands as a dive destination that we hope you consider, but it's 365 dive sites. The safety, you know, without anything, they're always safety in mind. You know, a bad blemish, especially with social media right now, can run across the world in no time. The diving, like I said, is very easy. We don't have the crashing waves. So it's It's a very easy dive. I always tell everybody is if you drop off the boat and if you come back up without moving that much, chances are you're going to hit your head on the bottom of the boat. It's very convenient, the diving in general, plus getting to the Cayman Islands. And we have a lot of programs that are supporting the local divers and the local dive shops. Very proactive island. And some of our dive operators, some of the services they offer, of course, they have all the resort courses, the water referrals. So anything you need in that, so that way, Cheryl or the dive operator can help you out with that. But they have programs that are with the disabled divers. They have underwater photography courses, anything you need of that sort. And then we are always very proactive when it comes to the waters of the Cayman Islands. They've been a pioneer and an example for the rest of the Caribbean when it comes to protecting the national treasure, as they call it, that lies just below the surface. Cayman is not this beautiful, lush, mountainous island. We always said that the beauty of the Cayman Islands lies just below the water. They do practice marine conservation. They have the reef preservation, coral nurseries around the islands. And you can, as a diver, if you're staying at a property that has one, you can take part, you can help them clean the coral nurseries and things of that sort. Marine parks, we have the Shark and Ray Protection. We have the Central Caribbean Marine Institute on Little Cayman. This is a nonprofit organization that kind of, I mean, they study the corals in the way of the bleaching, of any diseases, things of that sort. They were one of the first accredited of finding the lionfish in the Caribbean. And they act kind of like they'll get a lot of college students down there that are going through these marine biology courses, and they'll take part for a summer, for a term, whatever, and help with these type of things that they're doing from the CCMI. So it's a very, if you're on Little Cayman and you have a free afternoon, a lot of times they like when people stop by and they'll kind of show you around and let you know or tell you about what they're doing. They also are very proactive in the lionfish culling. They have monthly volunteer culling by local operators. They sell the fish locally, and they raise the money to continue these efforts for the culling. And they have certain contests, like they'll have contests between the different dive operations, who gets the most, and they might throw in some cases of beer, and whoever gets them gets the cases of beer, something of that sort. They do offer certifications for visitors. And so just to, somewhat try to keep them in check, we realize that it's not going to be eradicated. They're everywhere. They're deep. They're shallow. They're becoming very aware that people are trying to hunt them. So a lot of them that they've, been nicked before, they're out of there as soon as they see you coming. But they're found as far north as the Boston Harbor. They come all the way down to the Caribbean. They have voracious appetites. In the Cayman Islands, many of the small reef fish are hard to find because of the lionfish and the way they eat. But, it's funny because it's almost twofold here. They are, if you ever watch a video on Facebook, or YouTube, I'm sorry, it's on YouTube of the grouper eating a lionfish, or they were kind of hunting it and then grabbed it. That was done on Little Cayman, and that was CCMI that recorded that. But everybody right now is rightfully so, they're complaining about the sargassum seaweed, which is traveling all over the Caribbean. A number of years ago, I sat in on a discussion, I think it was at DEMA, where our Department of Environment was talking about this. And it's kind of on and they don't know why, it's going up, but our Department of Environment actually took some out of the water and they were studying it and they're trying to figure out what is this all about. And they found so many little reef fish within that seaweed. It's almost like Mother Nature's way, I don't know, to kind of repopulate the reefs after the lionfish have decimated them. So it's There was one in particular, I remember that the Department of Environment, when he was giving this, he said they found a frogfish in one of the piles of sargassum, which they haven't seen in the Cayman Islands in many, many years. So see, everything happens for a reason. We also, just so you know, the Cayman Aggressor, the liveaboard, is available through Grand Cayman. I think it's a Saturday to Saturday. Again, Cheryl knows more about that than I do. Leaves from Georgetown Harbor. So that's an option with Deep Blue. They visit or try to visit, weather permitting, all 3 islands. It is an all-inclusive. And of course, the different types of diving that you can do in the Cayman Islands. Of course, you have the wreck dives. We have probably one of the most famous is the Kittiwake. The Kittiwake is a decommissioned U.S. submarine rescue vessel. It's on Grand Cayman. It's off just north of 7 Mile Beach, north side of 7 Mile Beach. There's 5 decks, sits in about 65 feet of water and is about 18 to 20 feet below the surface. There's a lot of plaques on there that kind of donations that help raise money to sink this. You do get a commemorative coin. There's a little extra charge that if you dive this, because that money generated helps keep the ship, where they keep the seaweed, the algae, anything growing on it, they keep it clear. And then, of course, the famous, like I said, was the Captain Keith Tibbets, which is on the Brack, which is the 120-foot Russian destroyer. We also have shore diving available. This is not available all over the island. You know, if you know the island, you can pick up mats while you're there. The properties themselves offer it. And like some of the properties might say, if they have a lot of boat traffic coming in and out, they'll tell you, don't shore dive between such and such an hour, because that's when the boats are coming back for lunch or things of that sort. You want to pick up a map, which will give you the points that you can drive up to and then shore dive, because otherwise it can be a long swim to get to the dive site if you're not familiar with it. And then, of course, night diving. You know, they're always telling Cayman we have no nightlife. Well, here we go. Night diving is available right here. Typically, the operators of properties will offer these a couple times a week, or they, you know, if you have a big enough group of people, they will usually schedule one just for your group. And I'm not a big fan of night diving. It's just me, but I know a lot of divers love this, and they do have great night diving. You can go up to Compass Point and they will take you where you see on this one picture, it's the coral spawning. Steve has it down to an art where he can get it to, I bet you within 2 minutes of when these all do their bursts. So it's very interesting. We also, like I said, we're the home of the International Scuba Diving Hall of Fame, which is over by Pedro St. James. There are, you know, it's just a little bit to educate yourself on some of the pioneers of the dive industry. There's a variety of artifacts that they have housed at Pedro St. James in their museum there. They have an induction every year. It usually is September, October, where they have a dinner, but they also have packages that include diving and possibly dive with one of the people that are being inducted. Now this year's, of course, because of everything going on, was canceled. So this was actually the year they were gonna have the grand opening of their new facility at Pedro St. James. So that didn't happen, maybe pushed off till next year. Now we're going to just talk about the animal in the room, or the elephant in the room. This is just kind of a general of where we were before March. We had the record stay over visitors, and 2019 was the first time we went over 500,000 visitors. So the infrastructure, the product development, and I just went back one. Everything was going up. And then, of course, everything happened. And so we're starting from square one. We're starting from nothing all over again. But just to let you know, these are some of our figures for COVID as it is right now. But Cayman took a very drastic approach, but they were protecting their residents. They didn't want the island inundated with COVID. It's a small island and a small population, and it could just spread very quickly. So as of right now, we are scheduled to open up the borders September 1st. There's a lot of rules going in. September 1st, if you want to come in the month of September, you have to go online to the government website. You fill out an application. If you're approved, right now, the only flights that we know are coming in are Cayman Airways. You have to have that piece of paper and to get on the flight, but you also have to have a proof that you took a test within 72 hours of arriving onto Grand Cayman. Mandatory 5-day quarantine with a health monitor that monitors your temperature, your heart rate, and acts as a GPS so that they know you're quarantined. After 5 days, they give you a test. Everything's okay, then you're free to go as you want. So, like I said, a lot of rules. We'll move into a different phase. Right now, they're looking at the 1st of October, but a lot of it is going to depend on where the world is at that point. But we did take took the drastic measures to protect everybody. And, Cayman has always kind of done this. They've always had somewhat being able to, make switches real quick. We have a 2-part economic system in the Cayman Islands. Of course, we have the banking and we have tourism. So it wasn't like there was no money coming into the island. They just kind of held off until we know what's happening with this whole thing. But anyway, I think that concludes this presentation, but I know there's questions and answers, or questions anyway. I'll see if I can answer them. But in the meantime, I'm just going to end this show. We're gonna pick up here so you guys can see a little bit of the Cayman Islands while we're doing questions. Hi, Cheryl.
Hi, Jeff. Thank you. It was a great presentation. You really shared a lot on all 3 islands. So thank you for that. We can chat with people in the chat box. So there are a number of questions. Guys, whenever you have a microphone, we try and put you on directly with Jeff for you to ask your questions. So Carrie, if you want to give me a hand unmuting the people that have started to ask questions. And then guys, in the participant or chat box, you can actually raise your hand. And we will put you on with Jeff if you have other questions that you want to ask, or if you don't have a working microphone or you're a little bit shy, you can type it in the Q&A box.
That's a horrible way to spit it.
So, but I'm going to ask you, Jeff, on behalf of someone I know doesn't have a microphone, and that is Keith. Keith asked, are there any big animals around Brock and Little? Do you know of any larger animals that might be able to be seen in Brock or Little?
Well, of course you're going to find the sheep or the sharks. There's, lemon sharks are the big ones that are around there. The way that the sister island sits, just a few years ago, they had a pod of orca go through. They have whale sharks, but they're not typical of that area. A lot of times you come upon that by accident. I know that the orcas, a diver was down there and actually videoed them from underneath the water, but they were shocked that they were in there, but just depends how the fish are migrating. But sharks are not uncommon because they live just off the wall. They're not going to be right within the depths normally that you're diving, but you'll see them come up off the wall.
Okay. Yeah, and Laurie was, for anyone that was looking in the chat box, Laurie, who's one of our team members, she said that she has friends that have got pictures of a hammerhead that cruised by Brock back in March. So I wouldn't say expect, known for massive animals, but Mother Nature is fun and anything can happen. And right now with Corona, a positive spin on this. I've been hearing of migrations, crazy sightings of different animals and everything else in various destinations now that we're not in the water. So it's going to be really exciting to get back in the ocean when we finally can. Sorry, go ahead.
Funny that you say that because I just heard that, which we all go, because they said there were black reef-tip sharks in the North Sound, which is where Stingray City is. And because they use the rays as, food. But typically, because there's always people there, they do not come into the North Sound. So now that there's no people there, and they always can tell a healthy reef they said there's sharks on the reef. They always know a healthy one when they see sharks. So,
Right, right.
anyway, sorry.
No, it was great. Thanks. Michael, you had a couple of questions. Michael Richardson, you're on. Oh, I think he literally just disappeared. Where did he go? Well, I know one thing he asked is Uber available on any of the islands?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay. And then also Crystal Cave, is there any opportunity to dive at Crystal Cave?
No, because the underwater lake is only like a foot deep. It's not deep. So no, there's no way to do that. They won't even let you go into the water.
Okay, thanks. It looked beautiful. I've never made it to Crystal Cave, but it did look beautiful. Randy Lou, your mic's on.
Yeah, is the 50-pound weight limit on Cayman Express new? I sure don't recall that my last time on Cayman Brac.
Not on the Brac. Well, unless you're taking the Otter over. It's a 16 passenger that they have that, and it's 55 pounds. But if you're taking the jet service into the Brac, no, then there's, you're allowed 55 pounds.
No, I actually flew on the Brac my last time, but my photo gear is close to 50 pounds.
And you're to go over to the Brac?
Yeah, or
Okay.
to go to Cayman if I bring my, or to go to Lido if I bring my photo gear. I mean, I'm close to 50 pounds right there.
Well, and then they can charge you a charge for that.
Right.
Okay.
Randy, that 55 is free allowance, not so. If you're taking Cayman Airways over, say from Tampa or Miami, and an international flight on a jet, like Jeff said, it's typically, you'd have to check because things change all the time, but typically 2 bags at 55 pounds each per bag, which all the other US carriers stop it at 50. Last I knew, if you were taking one of the Otters from, say, Grand Cayman over, the 55-pound weight limit was in 1 bag for free. And as long as, they weren't overweight, or it might be that the other bag goes standby, you could take an additional bag, but you would pay, I think it was 50 cents a pound or something like that for anything over 55 pounds. So you could still take some clothes and all your camera gear and your dive gear and everything else. Just be aware that 1 bag may have to make it on the next flight or something like that, and you'll be facing a charge for it if you're doing the Otter.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Kathy, you have a question? Oh, hold on, Kathy, you're not unmuted. Kathy, do you want to type? I don't know what it is. Carrie will continue to try and unmute you, but you might want to type it because for whatever reason, it's not allowing us to unmute you. It might be your end because we're trying. In the meantime, does anybody else have any questions or comments for Jeff? You can type them in the Q&A, or you can raise your hand on the chat box and we'll put you direct with Jeff. So I know a couple of people in the comment box when Jeff was sharing about, okay, all right, I guess Kathy doesn't have any questions. So yeah, I know somebody, Jeff, in the chat box, a couple of people were like, oh, 5-day quarantine, things like that. Just to comment, that's just for phase 1. Things are changing all the time. Just as the beginning, when coronavirus started, it was this country enacted this rule and this country enacted this rule, then it closed down, then this one closed down, and it was chaos. We're entering, from my perspective, we're entering a time of chaos again, but it's in an attempt to reopen. In a way, it's a little bit more chaotic because a shutdown is a shutdown. The borders are closed, go home, stay home. Whereas in the reopenings, every country is doing it a little bit different. And then as numbers change, though that criteria changes, either the date shifts or the criteria shifts. What Cayman has done is September 1st is their first phase, and many countries are doing this. They've established a phase of, okay, let's do this gradually. Let's see how it goes, everything else, and if we can keep it under control. Phase 1 is September 1st, and they do have the test and the monitoring, and they also have the 5-day quarantine. and self-isolation. I know that sounds crazy, but to be honest, Cayman's for phase 1 isn't gearing to the average diver going for a week. They're opening to residents, people that have a vacation home or something like that, that usually, you know, retirees that stay there for 2 or 3 months. Let's let those people in, see how September goes. And then October 1st is currently what they're shooting for phase 2, which will still require the tests to enter the country, but the self-isolation 5-day quarantine will lift. Having said that, depending on their numbers, our numbers, whatever else goes on in the world, that date could change or the criteria for phase 2 could change. Jeff, that's my understanding of it. If you have anything else you want to add to that.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And even when it was said, I was confused because I thought, well, who opens up? Because, you know, they're nixing your typical traveler, your typical diver that goes for a week vacation. But what people need to understand is a lot of these islands, and not just Cayman, but a lot of them, the workers there, the people that work for the hotels and the attractions and the dive operations, they've gone home. So Cayman was officially a 2-week quarantine until September 1st. So no, I think this is a way to actually repopulate the employees that need to be there to when the divers and the guests start to arrive again. So I think that's one of the reasons they put this phase into effect. But again, they are looking to October 1st, but also over 90% of the visitors to the Cayman Islands come from North America. So they are monitoring both the US, Canada, to see how things are happening here before they open it up, you know, for a free-for-all. So, but yeah, it's heading in the right direction. Let's just put
it. That's, I mean, it's, as I said, it's for us, you know, following all the different things that are changing, it's even more chaotic and even more difficult to track, but it's an attempt to reopen, which is in a much better direction than what we were dealing with in February,
Right.
March. So, so we have Luis Garcia. Luis, you're on. You had a question kind of staying in this vein of the Corona entry. Did you want to ask your question directly to Jeff?
Sure. Thank you for all the information. My question is, the 5-day quarantine, are you allowed to leave your room to go diving, go eat, or is it like you stay in your room, they bring you food, and once those 5 days are over, you're allowed to leave your room?
some of it, like what you're asking, is still unanswered. We're still waiting
Okay.
for all the details to come out. But I will tell you right now, if you were to go to Cayman tomorrow, it's a 2-week quarantine. You're in your room. You're allowed out 20 minutes every day, and they bring you 3 meals a day. So I don't
Okay.
be that extreme. But diving, you know, that kind of thing, I can't answer that right now. There is a government, I mean, if you go to the Cayman Islands government, government.ky, they're supposedly going to start posting some of those policies. But that was actually, we had a call about the press briefing on Friday. We had a call yesterday. That was one of the questions, and we're still waiting for them to answer that. What is the person able to do?
I'll do a shore dive for 15 minutes if I'm allowed.
I can tell you, Louise, from the resort standpoint, they're basically, most of them have just, they're writing off September. They're not, you know, a lot of the resorts, as soon as there's openings, they start working to put things in place. I know a lot of the resorts we've spoke to now, this has been announced this week, have basically written off September. It might be because there's not clear answers, or it might be that perhaps they're reading it that it is. I mean, I do know the term self-isolation was used. So us personally, you know, if you're already booked for September, we're muddling through it. If you were looking to get out of town as a brand new trip, I would feel much more comfortable waiting for travel until October. So that's just my personal take and what we've been talking to the resorts as far as their interpretation so far.
Right, and a lot of the properties aren't even officially opening up until after the 1st of October. So right now there's a few properties that are open for staycations, people within the Cayman Islands, but a number of them have chose not to. For instance, Sunset House, I don't even think they have boat diving right now. They're allowing shore diving, but just a few of the operators are actually doing boat diving.
Okay. Thank you.
Corey,
Welcome.
you're on.
I know that everybody is that things are changing daily in the Caribbean, and given Corona and in most travel destinations, but the 72-hour having a test within 72 hours is extremely prohibitive. Is that in the immediate future? Do you anticipate that changing October 1st, or is that something that's going to be looked to change, look to be reviewed in the future?
It'll be reviewed, of course, but I don't see that changing. It really depends on where everything is going the 1st of October, but I really don't see that changing. But I can't honestly answer that until the government comes out with their policies.
I understand.
Different phase. I know it's hard. I just had a friend that was tested twice. The first time they told him a week to 2 weeks. The second time they said 24 to 48 hours, but it was actually like, I think it was 72 hours. Could have been a little bit more that they finally got the results. And so, yeah, I know here it's difficult. Cayman right now, they have the instant test. They can do a test right now and find out if you have the COVID. And but I know in the US it's getting more difficult because of the numbers that are coming out. But I would just say Cheryl will be probably one of the first ones that'll be notified when policies go into effect, but we're still kind of waiting for that to come through.
Yeah. Corey, you went on mute. Oh, there you are. You're on mute again if you wanted to respond to that.
No, I perfectly understand. Thank you very much. It's pretty much wait and see. I mean, as much as we'd like to book, I find it difficult to start to arrange anything until phase 2 is open and underway.
Right, and I completely understand. I mean, this is a whole new world we're walking into, and nobody knows what the next step is or what to even expect. So.
And that's how we're taking it, honestly. I sit in on a lot of some of the governments actually stream their stuff online. You can actually sit in on Facebook or other social media Zoom meetings and listen to the government hash things out. And it's actually really, really interesting. Some of the countries, for example, started out with the 72-hour requirement, realized that the US couldn't meet that, and changed it, say, 5 days or 7 days, depending on the island. Cayman's has been one of the more strict. They're also, while they very much rely on tourism and US tourism, they're not 100% solely financially dependent on it. There are other industries that the Cayman Islands are in. I mean, they're famous for banking, for example. So they have been able to be more strict. So they may not change that 72 hours. They may stick to it and wait for the US to catch up, which a lot of other countries are able to perform rapid tests with answers within 15 minutes, 2 hours, things like that. I just think the population is so massive. Our numbers have been climbing, so tests are getting harder. We were heading in the direction a couple of months ago of going from you had to be at a hospital, you had to be really ill, then it became you had to have symptoms. Very recently, Rite Aid now, you don't even have to have symptoms. You can just fill in a form, at least in the state of Ohio, and go and get a test because you want to get a test. So they are becoming more readily available, but then as our numbers go, it's taking longer to process. So I think it's going to be a combination of the US being able to catch up because the technology is there to be able to meet the demand for the sheer volume of tests that Americans need. And then each island is weighing up, depending on what the states is able to do, if they're going to stick to 72 hours or if they're going to make that a day or two longer. And at this point, I think it's going to be wait and see. They've got a target date of October 1st, but depending on what happens in September, if their numbers suddenly go crazy, they may shut down. If everything goes great, October 1st, I don't see them making it earlier, but October 1st, it will be more realistic for actual tourists going for a week. So, but we're watching all of that. But personally speaking, if I had a trip booked in September, I'd be looking to move it. If I had a trip already booked in October and I really wanted to go, I would sit and play the waiting game. If I didn't have a trip booked, in all honesty, I would sit and wait, see how September starts to flush out, maybe even October 1st. And then, to be honest, you'll be able to get rooms and flights and everything else for a very last minute if all of a sudden everything looks great and you can get out of here. Hope that helps.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, yeah, I don't know. It doesn't look like there's anybody has any other questions. So I know we've kept Jeff past time. We're always happy to stay and hang out for the evening. Jeff, did you have anything else you want to share?
No, not that I can think of. You know, Cheryl knows how to get a hold of me. So, I mean, even like all the little maps we have and everything, those are always available. Brochures, anything of that sort. But I'm in the Midwest. Depending on when you're located, we have six reps that cover the United States. So, you know, you can reach out to Cheryl. She can reach out to me. I can get it to where it needs to be, whatever. But, you know, everybody stay healthy, stay safe. And hopefully October 1st, we will see a big turnaround and everybody's coming back to the island. So
I'm quite happy to be a guinea pig.
yeah. That's what my boss says. He said, I want to be on the first flight going back. And I keep telling everybody, I haven't traveled since March. I said, I don't even know if I remember how to pack a suitcase. And I've been doing it for almost 25 years.
Right. It'd be a sweet day when you got to find all your dive gear and jam it in a bag. So,
But
all right.
thank you. I
Well,
want to thank Deep Blue and I want to thank everybody that participated and came on and listened.
yeah, thank you for joining us tonight, everybody. Next week, we will be back Tuesday PM at 7. Next week, we are going to take you away to St. Lucia. So we hope that you will join us next week. And once again, Jeff, thank you so much for everything.
Oh, you're very welcome.
All right. You have a great night. Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.